My mother used to say a long time ago, whenever there would be any real catastrophe and the movies are on the air, always look for the helpers. There will always be helpers. That's why I think if news programs could make a conscious effort of showing rescue teams, medical people, anyone coming into a place of tragedy, to be sure that they include that. Because if you look for the helpers, you'll know that there's hope. And with that, thank you, Mr. Rogers, for that amazing quote. And welcome to episode number 2 of my podcast, Find the Helpers, where I will speak with people across the country who have either been there as helpers to others or helped by others. This podcast will look for stories of hope and healing, as we can all use a little hope in our lives. And rather than the bombardment of the typical news cycle that my guest and I are very familiar with, we will focus on love, civility, and decency. It will be about the best in those around us. And with that, and with the best in those around us, I want to welcome tonight's guests, my friends, Alyssa Milano and Ben Jackson. I think the last time people saw us together publicly was with Ted Cruz. So,
that might be true.
Yeah. So, before I get started, because I think people probably know you, Alyssa. I think people have gotten to know me a little bit. But Ben, tell people who you are. Because I will just simply say this. I've got to know you over the past 2.5 years. You've become one of my favorite people in the world. I think you're probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, one of the most decent people I've ever met, and one of the most fierce protectors of his friends that I've ever met. That's my description of you, but I think people would like to know from you a little bit about who you are.
Wow. Well, that's wild of you to say, but thank you. I hope that you expand your audience of people to me, because there are lots of really good people out there. But I am a dad more than anything. If the only thing it says on my tombstone at the end of the day is dad, that will be enough. And so
I understand that.
Yeah, I know you do. And, it's my identity is being a father. My daughter Emma was born in 2001 with cancer. She had a tumor on her neck that was bigger than her head. It came out of her mouth. It went down into her chest. And she spent 17 hours in surgery the day she was born and 9 months in the hospital, most of it in the intensive care unit, and lost the ability to speak permanently the day she was born, basically. And she's grown up with serious physical disabilities as a result of that. She's had chronic lung diseases. She spent most of high school in the hospital. And I've spent most of my adulthood, she was born when I was 26 and I am now 45, dedicated to her. And it has been the best work of my life. And now she's in college and I get to figure out who I am again. So, maybe we'll start figuring that out together. But now I am somebody who really cares about what's happening in the world and goes a little bonkers when I see it going wrong, and I'm too stupid to keep my mouth shut most of the time. So that's maybe where I am now.
And I actually got to know you and Alyssa together, because together you started a group called Nora, which I'll give you a chance to maybe describe what that is. And Alyssa, I'll give you a chance to tell people who you are in a minute. But shortly after Jamie was killed, I don't think it was more than a month, you all reached out to me. And you were starting this group. And what I found is, like so many other people who I thought were reaching out to me and we were going to have this temporary connection, it didn't work out that way. Because you both embraced me on that day. You haven't let go. You become dear friends of mine. But talk a little bit about the group and maybe even what you asked me to do for our first event.
So the night...
First, I feel like we should tell the story of how Ben and I met, because...
Well, I was going to get there, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it sets up what we were able to do with NoRA. So during the threat of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, going away, I put out a call for people to send me videos of why and how that would affect their lives. And I received a video from Ben Jackson, who I felt he was actually in the hospital with Emma at the time. And his video was so incredibly compelling, but also just really, he's a brilliant man. He's really brilliant. And so I could tell that this was someone that was someone that I was going to want to amplify. So I put that video on my Twitter stream with, millions of followers. And it actually wound up getting picked up by MSNBC and by Bill Maher. Mm-hmm. This video of Ben Jackson talking about his daughter and how negatively his life would be affected if the ACA were to go away. And so from that thing that I always say about having a platform, and one of the best things about having a platform is being able to hand over the microphone to people that don't have as big of a platform, I handed my microphone off to Ben. Mm-hmm. And we created something really beautiful, not only a connection in advocacy and activism work, but also a friendship that I don't even know how I functioned without him before.
Same. Very same.
It's the craziest thing. And he is family now. He is my human, just as much as my parents and my brother and my children and my husband. And so when the tragedy struck in Parkland, Ben called me and he said, we have to do something. And it was just, that's where it came from. And I'll let Ben take it from here as far as our mission.
But I want to go back now a minute, because as long as we've gone there, because Alyssa, and it drives me crazy, because when I see the way sometimes people will talk to you on social media, because the Alyssa that I know is the one who reaches out to people who aren't expecting it, who embraces them, who gives them platforms, who shows them the light, who treats them well, who lifts their voices. And you do it for people across this country, not for the fanfare, but because you have the biggest heart. And what is amazing to me is you do this, and I'll let you tell more of this, while you're truly, I think, the busiest person I know, because in addition to your advocacy, you're still acting. You have your own media things that you're doing, podcasts and otherwise. I'm not sure that people recognize that you actually also have some large businesses that you own. I'm not sure how many of you there actually are, but you've done such amazing things, and yet you still find the time to do the most human thing and reach out.
Well,
what motivates you? Like, how do you do that?
I think that I am nothing without the people that support me, and that's not just the people that love me and encourage me to be who I am, but also the people that support me in my businesses and through, my writing and publishing and my podcast. And Ben also plays a role in all of that as well. I mean, we write together, we produce the podcast together, and I have like my best friend Allah, who I think maybe you have met.
I've met him. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in my life for 26 years, and he helps me with things like my clothing line and my production company, and
which, by the way, people wearing sports apparel, there's a good chance they're wearing your clothing.
well, women wearing
women, yes.
Yes, I don't have any men's clothes, but yeah, about 11 years I pioneered the female fan apparel that was not pink, and it is true fan apparel that is fashion forward, comfortable, made of wonderful fabrics, and yeah, and so it's called Touch by Alyssa Milano, and I'm very proud of it because the we changed the entire industry, really, which has been a very rewarding thing.
Emma wears her Red Sox touch stuff all of the time. Even this year, with the Red Sox being what they are, she still likes the clothing so much that she'll wear it. So
yeah, well, I mean, as long as it's made out of quality materials and it's flattering, women will wear, anything. I still wear a Hello Kitty T-shirt that I had from when I was like 19 years old. Because
Ben, I'm going to get Emma some Dolphins material or clothes.
Well, we always need some stuff for like kicking around the house when nobody's looking. That's fine. Or like opposite day, or it's fine.
But thank you for the kind words, Fred. But I am nothing without my village of people that lift me up and support me, not only professionally but also personally. And I feel that the most rewarding work that I do is my activism and my advocacy work, and you can't subtract the humanity from that. And part of that humanity is reaching out to people and connecting in ways that mean something to that person. So yeah, I'm gonna keep doing it. They can keep trying to silence me. It's it's not going to happen, but not because I'm so strong. It's not going to happen because of the support system that I have around me that keeps me resilient.
Well, you know what? You both did that for me. And and that's why I actually talk about you both in my book, because it was at a time in my life where honestly I could not have been more broken. That's the word that just sums up how I felt at that time. And there you two were stepping into my life to say, we've got you, and join us, let us be a part of what you're going to go through. And you were, and I'll never forget. And I mentioned, what we, did, I think it was back in April of 2018 when we went to Dallas to confront the NRA at their convention. It's where I met you the first time. And we were confronted by some really insane people there who confronted you specifically. Many of them came with their AR-15s around their shoulders, to intimidate. But I saw what toughness looks like, and it was in that few hours that afternoon where I knew what this battle was going to look like, especially later that day when those folks went to Twitter and misrepresented what was going on in our park. And you know what I'm talking about. So I just want to hear from you both a little bit about that day, that weekend, because it really is where the connection between us started.
So I think, just to step back for a minute, when you say about, coming in and holding you up and never letting go of you, the thing that strikes me most about that weekend, one of the things, and especially, I've never been graceful about this. I'm better at it now than I was then. And Alyssa, the way you handle it makes me crazy, but is that everybody wants something from Alyssa, right? They come to her and she gives everything that she has to that. And she sees things that she believes in and she works to support that. And we, in your hardest moment, asked something of you when everybody in the world that I knew would have rightfully told us to get out of their face. And you said, how can I help? And you showed up in this state that you were in where, you know, we've talked about this a lot, and a lot of people say, I don't know how you get out of bed. And that's a fair and accurate statement, but sometimes it's the only thing you can do, right? Like you can't. And, but you didn't just get out of bed. Like you showed up, and you showed, I think that was really, you know, you had already had the sort of Dana Lash town hall, but it was sort of like your coming out party as an activist, right? Like at that moment, you were a father whose daughter had just been murdered, and nobody knew anything about you other than you were pissed, right? And you weren't going to put up with a senator and a hack lying to you. And what you did this time is you came and you said, now you came to me, NRA, and you said your piece, and now I'm coming to you. Right. And like, how could we let go of that? How could we ask something of you in that moment when people are always asking of us, and we asked of you and you gave, right? Like, how could we ever let go of that? But so that's what strikes me most about that weekend in Dallas, is that when you're standing on stage and you're talking about your story, and this time you know, I've heard you tell your story of what happened with Jamie several times now, and you have a rhythm to it now. You understand how it goes. You understand how to tell it to your audience, which is great and horrible, right? That you've had to tell the story so many times, but you tell it now in a way that you capture a room with your delivery. And what was different about it then is that it was probably the first time you really told that story publicly in a crowd in that way. And you told it in such a raw way that you had a silent public park, right? Which is not a thing you can have, but you had it until InfoWars started showing up, right? Yeah. And trying to shout you down. And you didn't back down from them. Like, okay, this is a guy who's going to take a swing every time somebody comes at him. And you won. You beat InfoWars.
And shut them up.
At their own game. Right. And so those are things that strike me about that weekend with you and your participation in what we did. And, you know, that's, how can you not stick with that? You know, it's like trying, do you root for Rocky or do you root for Ivan? Right. Like you were Rocky for sure. And it was something to see.
Yeah. And I also think that there was this element of, and I didn't know you before, and I really wish that I did know you before Jamie was murdered. But there is this element that you were kind of like, you were transforming right in front of my eyes into you've actually, since I've known you, have transformed quite a few times. You were the angry, rightfully angry father. You were the gun rights activist, and now I think that you have transformed into a true leader within the community. You are the person that I want to know how you feel about gun violence in America, and when something new happens, it's about getting Fred's opinion and Fred's comment, because I think the way in which you went at this, which I think is what surprised people so much, is that you weren't. And I remember Ben and I used to actually talk about being like scared for you.
You used to tell me you were worried about me. You still actually do sometimes.
Because you always seemed like you were so together. And I would say to Ben, I would say, like, is he going to crumble at some point? Like, what's going to happen here with this? Because you seem so stoic. And it was interesting because to see someone be so, you say you were broken, I say you were broken open there's a big difference, because when you're broken open, you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And there was such a vulnerability about the circumstances and about who you were, and what you were doing, but you never broke. You never, I've still to this day, I've never seen you cry. And we've been in some situations.
You know, it's such a,
I mean, I'm sure.
So just so you know, I do. In fact, often when I'm in public settings, I feel it coming on, and I will kind of look down. Just so you know, if you see me looking down, that's my way of getting control of myself. Because, and I've said this before, I am on this mission, and I feel like we are this close to achieving the end goal. I feel like November 3rd is the time where we can succeed. And to answer your question, I'm so determined and focused on this mission that when we finally get to that place where we get to stand with our next president, President Joe Biden, who will sign gun safety legislation into law, I will stand there and I will turn to a pile of mush. That's when it's going to happen.
And like from our perspective, and I don't mean our, like me and Ben, I mean from the outside, you wouldn't be as effective and impactful as you are if people didn't see your vulnerability and you didn't allow that. And we do, and we see it. And so you're not fooling anybody. But I've never seen in my life someone who is able to take that pain and transform it in the moment, not over time or once you got therapy or whatever the moment was or is. Whatever pain you're feeling in that moment, you are able to you'd actually make an incredible actor, because that's what all of acting is about, taking your emotions and transforming them into what you're supposed to convey in that moment, right? And that's what you're so good at. And I don't know that you're ever gonna fall into a ball of. I don't know that you are going to feel that that's a necessity. I don't know.
You know, I don't know. You know, Ben, you start off introducing yourself by saying you're a dad. Every second of my life, that's who I am, and I now see myself as a dad on this never-ending mission, reacting to what happened to my kids, you know, and I can't sit still because of it. And the one way I do get things off my chest and I get emotions out of me and I deal with them is I write. It's part of how I ended up doing the book. It's part of why I'm on Twitter all the time, because that's how I get stuff off my chest. But there's a lot of things. You know, it's funny. The things that break me, that I still to this day, I can't do it. My wife will she will look at videos of Jamie. She'll watch them. Jamie dancing, Jamie laughing, Jamie being silly. I can't do it. I can look at pictures. I still can't sit watching those videos. I mean, on occasion, I do. But for the most part, watching those videos for me is it's still too hard. You know, so to do what I do, there's things that I do avoid. There's no question about it. But I people who did know me, you mentioned not knowing me before this, which you didn't, before this all happened, probably would have said, especially when I was in my business world, that I'm a relentless prick. You know, I'm just relentless. And I'm not sure they would have always meant it as a compliment back then, but that relentlessness now is what drives me, because I wasn't that way before it was my kid. Alyssa, I live with the guilt of never having put my voice into this before it was my kid. And now I'm just determined to be a part of doing something. Listen, you both know, nothing we do, even after the next election, gets rid of gun violence, but we can start bending that curve. That's what we need to do. We can start bending the curve. We can do things that will save lives. And when people do this insane stuff to try and get under our skin, it happened to you today, Alyssa, where these trolls, they try to get under our skin. They've attacked you online. They've gone after the thing that is most precious to you. Not you, Ben, because they're too cowardly to do that. They go after your daughter, okay? And they're too cowardly to, what do the trolls do when they think they can really rip me apart? They go after Jamie. Yeah. They're cowards. Trolls are cowards. And the one thing,
are they real people though? Are there really people that are that fucked up?
Some. But
they are.
Listen, many of them are just paid keyboard warriors who would never be able to face you in person. But sometimes they also, they try to create fear. When it's just stupid Twitter comments, they're not going to bother any one of us. That we're long past that. But you know what? Today they went a step further. Something happened with you today. It became public. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. It actually happened on Sunday. Today is Tuesday. So Sunday I woke up to my husband screaming, everybody get into the theater. We have a theater that is soundproof and has a lock on the door. And my parents were staying over, which they do every weekend. And my kids were home, and the kids started screaming and crying, and everyone was terrified. I had no idea what was going on. I texted my husband because he just put us in there and then left. I said, what's going on? And he said the neighbor called 911 because there was a guy dressed in all black with a long gun, I think is how they said it. And in between our house and the neighbor's house, which there's nothing back there but woods. So what they said was in the woods. Now, the interesting part about all of this is it wasn't actually the neighbor that lives there. It was a neighbor who is house sitting in this house. So for 2 hours, we thought we had, I immediately always go to the, there's militia groups that I'm sure would like to hurt me. And that's probably what's happening right now, is that they've come to my house to terrorize me.
And you've had that happen before, though, so that's just an unfounded thing. That has happened.
I had a fan who walked into a fan who walked into my home that my husband had to wrestle to the ground, and I had to get a restraining.
Into your house?
Into my home, yes. And I had to get, this was before I had kids, and I had to get a restraining order. And so, this is part of the reason why my husband actually has guns in the house, which everyone is so shocked that we are a 2-gun household, because I fight for
You're not against legal, lawful gun owners.
No, I'm not. Exactly.
It's not rocket science.
So then, I heard helicopters flying overhead. They were, and the SWAT team showed up, and they were treating it as an active shooter situation. And then all of a sudden, like 2 hours into this, and I was holding it together for the kids. My son was freaking out. My daughter was like, are we going to die? Just Bella. And 2 hours into this, my husband comes in and he's like, they got him. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said that someone had called to turn themselves in because the helicopter. He heard the helicopters and he thought, oh, they might think that I'm trying to kill someone. I'm just here in the back of the house shooting squirrels.
No.
So it was a squirrel shooter, apparently. And I remember looking at my husband saying, I don't know, this doesn't feel real. And while we were still in lockdown, some friends of mine had found some tweets that people had already sent. Like, there's all these cops out front of your house. Aren't you the activist that calls to defund the police all the time? And something about that made me go, am I being set up?
And there's one very specifically that was an account that was created during the lockdown, that its only tweet was with very specific details about the number of police cars there, the helicopter. And I know people are going to say, like, I'm a conspiracy theorist here, but this is like, it was so detailed and so in the moment that there's just no way I believe that it was some dude shooting squirrels.
And the neighbor calls the police, and then I mean, I had my spidey senses went out, and I had a moment where I was like, I think, and I said to my husband, I think that this may have been a setup to try to get some sort of negative press around the fact that I called the cops, even though I have called for the defunding of policing. And he said, no, I think it was legit. I was like, who wears full black in the middle of a heat wave in California, and is like walking around with a rifle behind someone's home? That just, it doesn't feel like that's a real thing.
And it's not like your home is easily accessible either. It's not like someone can just drive by and pull off the road.
One road in and out. Behind my house is a creek, a hiking trail, and a mountain.
And so here's what they've accomplished. They have proven that Alyssa Milano, who wants gun safety, believes in the Second Amendment and legal lawful gun owners, and could not have been more supportive of the police. So whatever it was they were trying to do, it backfired.
Well, today, not only that, but they've also released videos from in front of my house where you could recognize that it is my home. It was basically like a doxing scenario as well. And today it hit like all of the right-wing media.
All the crazy stuff, yeah.
All the right-wing media has said that the person that calls to defund the police in support of Black Lives Matter movement had 2 police helicopters and 7 police cars in front of her house. So that's where we are today. I released a statement that was very in depth, that basically told the situation, and that, we wanted to thank the people in the sheriff's department, and also that these are the types of situations that police officers are trained for and should respond to. And we will always support police having the resources they need for appropriate policing actions. But also that we'd love to see equally trained non-police professionals respond to calls on addiction and mental health crises and nonviolent events, that so that the brave officers could actually do the jobs that they're trained to do. So, I mean, I feel like, and I've felt like this for a while, that from now until Election Day, we're not only going to hear about political disinformation campaigns where they attack candidates who are running, but also the people that are supporting those candidates, I think, will also have some campaigns against them. look, I've lived in the public eye since I was 9 years old. There's not a lot that people don't know about me. So it would make sense that they'd have to go to some kind of extreme like this to try to conjure up some negative press to discredit my voice, I think.
Well, and the shame is, and then I want to move on to the political conversation that you just initiated, because I would be remiss if the three of us didn't talk about that a little bit. But, you know, anyone who knows me knows some of my dearest best friends are law enforcement. You know, in fact, my daughter, the day she was killed, I mean, her body was identified by one of my best friends who was a member of law enforcement. And, you know, when incidents like this happen, which are likely fake, and law enforcement comes out to things like that, especially when there's a gun involved, that puts them at risk too. Okay. You know, and so when these things happen, you know, because we do value our law enforcement, we do want to keep them safe, but stuff like that, it puts them at risk as well. It puts your family at risk. It's just,
it scars my kids. I mean, they were terrified. They thought there was an active shooter in our backyard, and they had to
all because they wanted to get under your skin, and that's the worst part. They harassed your family to get to you, and that's the biggest bunch of cowards that there could possibly be. And you're right. I think some of this nonsense is we're going to see a level of crazy over the next 40-something days, unlike anything we've seen, because the election is coming closer. And we currently have someone in the White House who I would make an argument does not believe in the levers of democracy, who I would make an argument he's actually shown us how fragile and I won't say weak, but fragile our democracy is, because it requires somebody who actually believes in the what we call the norms. It wasn't based upon laws. Our democracy is a lot of norms and things. That's the way we've always done it. And you need a president who believes in those things. This one doesn't, and this one is willing to push those in this country to levels of behavior to hold on to his power that is inciting, and it's going to cause it is going to cause people to get hurt. And God willing, November 3rd, we will succeed, because we can't go through 4 more years of this guy. And Ben, you were just going to say something. So,
oh no, I was just saying it has caused people to get hurt. You know, we see this already. We've seen people, right? We've seen people die. We've seen people seriously hurt. We've seen it done by our government in really terrifying ways. Secret police, unidentified police, hidden badges, no insignia. The things that you know, when we were growing up, they told us about the KGB, right? Like those are the stories they told us to scare us about Russia. And they tell us these stories about the SS. And these are, you know, people say, oh, you say SS, it's hyperbole, but it is tactics that are reminiscent. But, you know, you mentioned, you said that he doesn't care about the levers of democracy. And I'd say that's true. But I'd say even worse than that is that he doesn't know that they exist. And I hope your kids aren't there, Alyssa, because I'm going to say the bad word in your house, because he is too stupid to know or care or find out what the structures of his power and the structures of his office are. He has no intellectual curiosity, and he has no intellectual capacity. And, you know, you talk about people being born on third base. This is a guy who was born in the owner's box and still managed to, you know, fail out of the league, but somehow cons enough people to get to where he is. He's just a dummy.
Ben, I disagree a little bit, because I think he does know. And I think he's also realized that so many of the limits were based upon, like I said, not necessarily laws, but traditions and norms. And he has shown how if you don't accept the traditions and norms, that you can just basically blow through the walls of democracy, and there's nothing to stop you.
Well, I think what we've seen with that is that, so many things in his presidency, we say this for the last 4 years, if that happened to any other president, it would have ended their administration. And what we've learned from Donald Trump, what he has taught us, and he has been very, very good about this, is that if you ignore it, it goes away, right? That if you have enough hold on power, which he does with a complicit Senate, he can do whatever he wants because there's no one to hold him accountable. There's no limit to his power because the checks on his power are just like, it's cool. And
he creates such a volume of chaos,
right,
that you just can't stick to any one thing.
Right. There's so much going on that he kills yesterday's story with today's news, and I think that's why it feels like there is no bottom, right? Because he just keeps piling the shit on, and I think I'm gonna have to agree with Ben in that, like, I'm sure if you ask that guy to expand upon any article of the Constitution, that he would not be able to, except for...
I can't argue with that. I agree there.
Except for things like, the Second Amendment allows you to have, the right to protect yourself and guns. Like, I don't think that he understands that the Constitution is the user's manual for this country, and that the things that he has done go against the Constitution. And I think that we threw around a lot in the beginning this phrase constitutional crisis, but this entire 4 years has been we have been in a constitutional crisis for the entire 4 years. And by the way, until the very last day that that he is in that White House, he will be continuing to create chaos and wreak havoc on everything that we know to be true for our country.
And listen, this weekend, because Donald Trump, the things that he intends, he says them out loud, they're going to ram through a Supreme Court justice before the election.
Of course.
Because he is counting on whatever the vote looks like, even if Biden has a significant win, he is counting on some type of litigation to ultimately cause the Supreme Court to rule in his favor. Now, whether or not that can actually happen, but that's what he's counting on. So I agree with you. The next few months until his very last day are going to be extreme chaos. They're going to get more dangerous. And I think to some extent he's counting on people's fear to just cause them to not even take that step to vote. I think he's going to...
I think we have to be clear as the adults in the room that we cannot fall into the trap of these doomsday scenarios, because we have to be able to recognize that is a form of voter suppression.
Yep.
That is a form of voter suppression that has worked for the Republican Party, and trying to make people fearful of election results, or whether or not we're going to get the results that night, or it's going to end up in the court. That's another way to suppress the vote, to make people think that their votes won't count. And I think that we have to stop feeding into that narrative as a party, that we have to tell people that their votes will count, because, we lost by 77,000 votes in 2016, and we have always been okay, and we will continue to be okay, and that we have to turn up for Joe Biden, and they will be safe to do it. Their health will not be in jeopardy.
Yep.
And their votes will count. Because if we start feeding into this whole, like, oh my God, and then he wants to that it's gonna dissuade people from actually using their vote.
Well, which is why, we're all very active on social media, and I hope extending that reach, telling people you need to vote, but not only voting, don't wait to the last minute. Have your voting plan. Different states have different rules. Know what you can do in your state. Know the earliest time you can vote, and just make sure you vote. There is nothing more important right now than making sure you vote, because that solves everything. So with that, two more things. You and I, Thursday night, we're going to be part of a Biden campaign fundraiser on gun safety, an issue that there is nothing more near and dear to my heart. And this administration, when he's elected, are committed to doing something about gun violence. And throw on top of that now the concerns around the Supreme Court and what that can mean to the whole fight around gun violence. I just want to let anyone know who does get a chance to listen to this podcast beforehand to please go to either your Twitter or Facebook or my Twitter or Facebook for the link to sign up. It does require a donation. It's worth it. It's part of our fight to do something about the gun violence epidemic, to help elect Joe Biden. The Thursday night, it'll be Alyssa, it'll be me, it'll be Gabby Giffords, it'll be Ted Deutsch, Lucy McBath. I feel like I'm leaving someone out here. Bradley Whitford. And so it's going to be a really great conversation. And so for anyone listening to this, I hope you join us Thursday night. We need your support. So I don't know if you both have anything you want to add to that.
I'll be there. I will be in the audience watching. I have purchased my ticket, and even as somebody who probably didn't need to purchase a ticket, I did because I believe in this so much. And I will say, politics is expensive. The idea of participating in this does, to some degree, beyond your vote. And some people can only vote, and that's okay. But if you have the means, if you have $100 in your pocket that you were gonna do something a little bit of fun with, what's really, really fun is not having Donald Trump as president right now. Like, I can't think there's anything more fun than watching him lose on November 3rd and watching his face as Joe Biden gets 400 electoral votes that night.
When that happens, I want to plan like a Zoom call where we invite everybody from around the country in to join us for a happy hour drink. We definitely will do that. Before I let both of you go, beyond just telling you I love you both and thank you for doing this with me.
I love you.
Same.
As this is hopefully something I will continue doing. I like to end the podcast by asking people something about themselves, but I want you all to tell people something that has never been publicly known about you before, something you haven't shared before, something that you would like people to know about you.
I mean, you should go first, Ben, because I have to think about it. That's tough for me because I've been in the public eye for my entire life. So I don't know that there's anything that people don't know. So Ben, you go first.
Okay. So when I was a teenager, I had aspirations of being a famous musician or a famous actor, and I had no idea what that entailed. I just thought I was going to do it, right? And I was a director of a Woody Allen one-act play in high school. That was horrible. It was the worst directing job, worst acting job ever. But from that, I was signed to do a PSA from our local community college in Manchester, New Hampshire, which aired on Manchester, New Hampshire TV for condoms. And if there is an award, like if there were Razzies back then, this would have won them all, because it was me and this other guy kind of standing around in a gym holding a punching bag. And he's like, "Hey, man, I think Sheila wants to do it," and so that was that's something not many people know. That was made public, in 1992 or whatever, but New Hampshire television. So not many people saw it.
That's really good. I literally can't think of anything that people don't know about me.
So what I didn't know about you when I went to your house, the animals. I have
a lot of
animals, and you have the best dogs.
I do have the best dogs.
Right.
So I'll tell you what. as a dog-obsessed family, which we are, my wife, myself, Jesse, and Jamie was dog-obsessed. In fact, one of the things we do with Orange Ribbons for Jamie is we donate to the Humane Society. So we are a dog-obsessed family. So I'll tell you what. Why don't you tell people about your animals?
Okay. I have a Corgi. I have 2 Australian Shepherds. And I have a Chihuahua. And I have 8 chickens. And I have 2 bunnies. And I have 9 horses in my backyard.
Wow.
And a Yankees fan. You have a Yankees fan in your house, and that's animalistic.
Yeah, that's I have to be a Yankees fan. Yeah. Yeah, so I have a lot of animals and I love them very much. And most of them are rescues. All the horses are rescues. And they are I don't know, I think it's really important to raise kids around animals, but even more importantly, they've given me they've kept me grounded in a way, because they don't care about who I am or what television shows I've been in, or they just like to be brushed and loved up on. And I always say I hope to one day be as cool as my dogs think I am.
Well, I think you're pretty cool. So on that note, I do. I love you both. I thank you for becoming a part of my life. And I'll see you tomorrow on Twitter and wherever we go from there.
Okay.
So
thanks so much. Love you.
Good night, guys.
Love you,
Ben. Thank you.
Love you too.